Okay, hi. I want to go over the Unit 3 exam. You should have already seen your grades, I'm guessing. If not, I'll help you understand how to calculate them. Some general stuff. Um, Multiple choice plus double the free response is your score. You can divide that by the curve if you want to know your percentage. Anything that it says in the multiple choice column or the free response question column are not relevant because we don't grade those as separate things in the grade book. Those are just to record the parts of your score, but they do not calculate into your class grade. The only thing that goes into your class grade is the unit exam total and the corrections that you add on top. Speaking of corrections, I can't stress enough how much I recommend that you do that. They help you learn, and it's just free points. It's just a gimme. Whatever you got now is not final. All you got to do is make sure that you did the Unit 3 work and that you handwrite your answers before the next exam. And I'll give you half a point for each of the corrected answers. You copy the question, write your new correct answer, and then you have to reference the course content to tell me why you know it's correct. On this exam, there were 25 multiple choice questions and 8 free response question points possible. So 25 plus 2 times 8 is 16 is 41, which is the highest score possible. 2 kids got a perfect score. That's uncommon. The curve was set at 35, and period 3 did a lot better. Remember, there is always a reward if you can prove that someone cheated in any period. The most general rule for all my students, and I'll keep telling you this all year, is slow down, write less, read more, think more. You want to look at the question, you want to pick it apart so that you know what the action word is. Are you supposed to explain something? Are you supposed to describe something? Are you supposed to be listing something? And then make sure that you know what you're talking about. Are they talking about one species, species in general, overall, global trends? Remember that each part of the exam is separate in the free response. So A, B, C, and D are separate questions. They don't necessarily relate to the same thing, and you should answer them separately, like A, B, C. A common trend, just to prepare you in general, not always true, but a common trend, is that their questions will be specific in A, slightly more general about that topic in B, and then about global patterns in C or in D. So they tend to go from one specific thing that you would answer with a vocab term, something very straightforward, something specific, and they tend to kind of bullseye outward. Um, I would strongly advise you to always keep scratch paper so you can take a quick minute to make a brief outline. And it only takes you a few minutes to write a perfect answer as long as you know what you wanted to say. So spend more time thinking, less time writing your answers. I've got some general science corrections and a couple of things to help you when you have topics like this one. Remember that diversity is not the same for biological, that it is for species, that it is for richness, that it is for genetic. You got to be really careful with associated terminology because a lot of you missed the mark because you were not specific about lingo. I also got to remind you that we benefit from healthy ecosystems with lots of species, and you have to be specific about how you explain that. So you should really grow this list in every unit. How humans benefit from the earth continues to come back every single unit. So work on your list. Keep checking that. In this case, you can go to the College Board and use their answer key to question C, I think, so that you can improve your notes. from the multiple choice, I can tell you that everybody should know the laws of thermodynamics. You should always look for a chunk of vocab, like those different words for the nitrogen cycle. That was on the exam. In this case, the different types of symbiosis, parasitism, mutualism, commensalism, competition, like those are just a free word bank question. They're all going to be on the exam. It's easy for me to choose. It's easy for the College Board to choose. When you learn a clump of vocab, you just know that's going to be on the test. You got to study those. I did warn you about the biomes, and you guys did pretty well with the maps. That was good. You did not do very well with something that I emphasized repeatedly, which is the bad soil in the tropics. It's counterintuitive. I told you it's a common misunderstanding, and a lot of you still blew it. I told you that the ocean provides most of our oxygen. I think you knew that most of the boreal forest is in Russia, but that's not the same thing as deciduous forest. The majority of that's in the US. And the majority of tropical forest is in Brazil. As a general rule, just to help you with the tests, those big lectures, like I tell you, this is a big lecture, like our recent lecture about fires and forest management. Like when I'm saying, hey, it's a big lecture, you should probably ask yourself, like, this dude has something to say every day. Why is he saying so much about this? I've got a script. Look, this is what I plan to say this year. You can see how far I've gotten. When I'm talking for like 40 minutes on a topic, I've been working on that lecture for 20 years. You got to ask yourself, like, oh, was that a fact that I didn't know? You should be writing all that stuff down. Because in this unit, Unit 3, I talked about succession, endangered species, invasive species, and big chunks of lecture. Those came up on the exam. There's a reason I put them in my class to begin with. I want you to imagine something. You ask a question about human health. Explain how high sugar intake is bad for human health. And your answers written on an exam are, it's bad for you, or because cancer, or HBP, or just restating the question, sugar's bad for human health. I need to point out that all 4 of those answers are correct, but they would get 0 points because it's bad for you is vague. That's something that any child would say. It sounds like you're guessing. I don't know, it's bad for you? Because cancer could have a correlation, but if you can't explain it, you don't know it. The test can show us that you don't know it. We're looking for the depth of your understanding. So you need to demonstrate that others. Don't be vague. Don't just mumble a word. Make sure that you use full sentences. And please don't restate the question. You're just wasting your time, wasting my time. I don't need to read that. You could say high sugar intake can raise blood pressure, which increases the chance of cardiovascular problems. That's not highly specific. The kid who said HBP could have just written this. If you don't know what cardiovascular means, that's fine. Just say heart and circulatory. You don't need to be a genius, but you do need to be a little bit more specific than some of you are in your answers. You have to show me you know something. What you don't do is use little empty, obvious phrases. Like if you just threw a child into my class, let's say a 5-year-old, and they don't have any specific information, but they know they're in an environmental science class. And you ask them, like, why are invasive species bad? And it's a child, and all they know is that they're in an environmental science class. They'd be like, I don't know, because it's bad for the ecosystem? It's bad for the environment? And they don't know anything. It's just a guess. You never say that sort of stuff because you just sound like a child who doesn't know. Don't say it's bad for the environment. Don't say it harms ecosystems. Don't say it's better for the earth. Don't ever use the phrase natural balance. Don't say anything vague or generic. The whole goal is for you to reference specific environmental science. Like, what did you learn in this class specifically about this question. A bunch of kids got A's. You can do it. It's not stuff that they necessarily knew before. And if it helps you, here's a few sentence forms. Like if the question's asking for a description, you could say the blah, 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 which is blah, 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 because you're describing. And if it says to explain, you would say the blah, 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 because reasons. If you can't describe or explain, you can give examples. I had 4 or 5 kids that blew it in the answer. And then at the end, they gave me an example. You know, like the thing with the sea otters. Somebody said sea lions. That, I can't remember even how they said it, but like the example showed that they understood that some species are more important than others. And on the answer key, it said explain keystone species. And I was like, there you go. His little sea otter is more important than other stuff because of food web and habitat connections. Pow! And I could give the kid credit, not from his crappy explanation, but from their crappy explanation, but because of their example. Easy money. I don't know who you are, but if you did dead worst, like you were like did really bad on this test, do your homework, then take notes, then study that stuff. Every part of the free response question was answered in the book or in the homework or in the class. It's also true of the multiple choice. Many parts came up more than once. You don't need to be creative. You don't need to BS. Don't babble. Don't try to use words you don't know. None of that helps you. Every question is looking for a specific fact from class. And I've done badly at school. I almost flunked out of high school. I pretty much had like a day to go before dropping out at one point. But you can do better. If I could do this, I know that all of you could do this. If you're not super serious about the course and these exams are just going to be ruining you, you have to do all the homework, all the classwork, and the test corrections. Lots of you kind of knew it and you just didn't say it right. This is really heartbreaking for you and for me. Like, you know, you give a list, but it's looking for full sentences. I could tell you knew it, but you just didn't say it right, so 0 points. You got to stop. Please don't be lazy. Please focus on how you answer your questions. You have to take this more seriously because at least for these students, I could tell you knew it. There's no charity in the College Board, and they've trained me not to be charitable with you. There's a format. You can learn it. Do the test corrections, get the last of your points. I used that example in the previous slide, or 2 slides ago, actually. A lot of you just missed a point here or there. No big deal. Missing 1 or 2 points is no problem. You're going to pass the AP test. By the way, you miss 1 or 2 points, you're perfectly on track for a 4 or 5. No big deal. Focus on answering your questions a little more carefully. That's all I would say. Read the question. Make sure that everything lines up, that your action word and that your subject are what they were looking for. And, you know, you were just a few words away. That's a good handful, like a third of my students, a quarter of my students were just like a few words away from a perfect score. So go back and get those points. Most everybody in this position already has a good enough grade. They probably don't need the test corrections. And the few of you who killed it, congratulations. I had maybe 15 perfect scores in the free response and maybe 3 or 4 perfect scores in the multiple choice, and 2 students had perfect scores on both. Awesome. You got it all. You understood what was being asked. I'm really impressed. I just want to warn you not to get lazy. Ecology tends to be the more straightforward part of APES. This is, generally speaking, the part where students tend to have the most success, the most perfect scores and stuff. Hurry up with those test corrections. If you have any questions about the exam, shoot me an email. Goodbye.